Julian, I wonder if you could jump in here in terms of some of the mahi you do in the legal space, and talking about collective strategies that you're well versed in, or maybe not so, or starting to explore.
Sure. I have lots of thoughts. I feel very overwhelmed because we've had, conversations very, very similar to this very intensely for about 18 years straight. I mean, at least conversations that I feel like I've been an active participant in. And it's so overwhelming because I feel like this is the most difficult part of the piece of this is the logistical piece of this. Like, how do we operationalize the ideas? How do we get from all of this, all of this really deeply felt, stuff into like concrete sort of plans that can be implemented? Like, that's partly why, like, I have the soul of a poet, but I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer now, which is aggravating to me all the time. Like, I'm a human rights lawyer. I do environmental cases. I litigate my ass off in court. I am all over this thing. And we are losing. We are losing desperately, and the stakes are so high. Like, I cannot tell you like how resonant it was for me, for Emalani to start this with her childhood and in the experience of militarization being embodied. I am at the point where I cannot even get through a week where my heart is not racing because the helicopters are flying too fucking low and close to my house. And I can't even regulate my own heartbeat. This, and I'm in court all day, like, and we are suing the US military right now. We've sued it last year. We sued it the year before that. This has been like the lion's share of my whole professional life, like suing this exact opponent. And we have lost so much ground. And I'm sorry to be the voice that feels like I feel like I can barely talk in this space in some ways because I just don't want to offend anybody. And there's so much heaviness. There is like the death and destruction that we're talking about. It is everywhere. It is around every fucking corner of this community right now. Every time I turn around, I'm in danger of my heart hardening. I can barely breathe. And this is like, okay, a couple of things. So if our analysis leads us to believe that our governments no longer represent our interests, perhaps they never have, what is the plan? One is Marco has made so many points about NFIP. I've talked to this exact conversation with Kyle and TK for so many years. We have sort of chased this circle many, many times. Do we want to revisit NFIP? Do we want to reconstitute it? Do we want to keep it with the same name? Do we want to give birth to a new idea, a new cross-borders regional group where anti-imperialism, indigenous anti-imperialism is its nucleus? If that's the idea, because we know that our governments are failing us. And like I, for example, did a lot of advocacy at the Pacific Islands Forum meeting. I have clients, they have needs, we're working on climate change, and it's useful. But like any other body that's dominated by states who consistently show us that they fail to represent our interests, we need this grassroots collective sort of re-energized. And do we want to do it under a new umbrella? Because NFIP also suffered from a bunch of sort of conspicuous failures. Despite what Marco's saying about all of its triumphs, it also failed in really fundamental ways. And I mean, in emotional ways. People left that movement feeling betrayed on a number of fronts a few times. So if knowing all of that, do we want to just give birth to a new thing? And if we do, what is is there a common pillar of sort of like core values that we want an organization such as this to be driven by? I would argue that one of the core values I would advocate for if I was on this group would be sort of the value of anti-commodification, having that be a really central principle in that organization. Another thing, one of the things that we need to do with, in my opinion, when it comes to things like RIMPAC, is seeing the sort of falsehood around so many of the ways the US military is currently like all the arguments they make. Let me be specific. RIMPAC, whenever it's about to have the RIMPAC exercises, it sort of like talks about how Hawaii is special and how these exercises being done in Hawaiian waters cannot be done anywhere else. They can't replicate it, but it's always a lie. Right now, less than a week ago, we had the Valiant Shield. This is literally almost an exact sort of set of naval war exercises, the SINKEX that Kyle talked about, the sinking of the ships, the live fire training, all of the same. If you read it and go through the list, it's identical military training activities. So, and then if that's the case, we should even come up with an order of priority, and we should have a timeline and a calendar when all of these major events, these multi-jurisdictional events are going to happen. So if there was such an entity, it could be stood up in time to oppose them one by one. We'd be operating according to a calendar. I'm sorry that this sounds sound crazy, perhaps. I'm just so mindful of the need to operationalize some of this. I think activists on Guam are so close to just being overwhelmed. Like, obviously, you can tell I am overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed because this is so much part of our daily life now. I mean, and now I can't get away from it in any kind of way because it's my professional life as well as my personal one. And this is how a lot of my people feel. So we need to start operationalizing this with a plan, which is, I think, partly what Catherine's been on this chat. I've been reading the messages that this is like the point some of us feel really most strongly about. I'll just say one last thing, because I know that I'm dominating this now, and that was never my intention. But one of the specific things is we realized in Guam that we have been using the UN, the United Nations, for roughly 32 years in exactly the same way every year. So 3 decades of advocacy that has failed spectacularly. So we sort of recently changed up our strategy, and we targeted the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights. And then we really did really close research on the 3 main UN special rapporteurs whose mandates are not only aligned, but their politics and their past decisions led us to believe that they would be the best bet. So we, directed our submission of a variety of human rights violations to those rapporteurs in particular. And one piece of good news is that we did recently successfully secure an actual joint allegation letter from all 3 special rapporteurs that was signed and sent to the US federal government, saying that the military of Guam is a violation of all of these human rights. That had never happened in 30 years of advocacy. So that's what I mean when I'm starting to feel like the need to be, like chiseling down this war into bite-sized battles and being a little bit more strategic about them and trying to win them in an order that we've decided upon. I hope that all makes sense. I apologize that it's very intense. Thank you all very much.
Kia ora, Julian. Never apologise for your intensity. Yeah? It's a light that shines from within you. Yeah? I don't live in the belly of the beast like you do, day in, day out. All my love and solidarity to our people in Guahan, we are with you. And you're right, we need to strategize and think about this really clearly, break it down. We're all peoples that have survived genocide. If we can survive genocide, we will survive this. Kia kaha, Julian.